In this tutorial, I'll show you how to draft an oversized shirt. To make this shirt, I used 2 yards of cotton fabric, and the best part is it's suitable for both men and women. Let's get into it. First, we are going to go through some calculations for the buttonhole and button placket. The buttonhole placket will be at the left front piece and is usually 1 to 1/4 inch wide. So I'll go with 1 inch. And I want the buttonhole placket to be folded once, so I'll add another 1 inch. But to get a clean finish, I have to fold it by 1/2 inch first to hide the raw edge before I fold it again by 1 inch. Okay, this is getting confusing, so I'll illustrate. I've marked out the allowance. Now I'll fold the placket first by 1/2 inch to hide the raw edge. Then I'll fold it again by 1 inch. This is very simple and clean. Do you get it now? After that, I'll add another 1/2 inch for the overlap. When you're closing your shirt, the buttonhole placket overlaps with the button placket. That's the reason for the overlap allowance. So 1 plus 1 plus 1/2 plus 1/2 equal to 3 inches. Moving on to the right front piece, which is the button placket. The button placket is usually smaller than the buttonhole placket, so the width would be 3/4 inch. The button placket would be folded the same way as the buttonhole placket, so 3/4 plus 3/4 plus 1/2 plus 1/2 inch overlap equal to 2.5 inches. So the buttonhole placket will be 3 inches, while the button placket will be 2.5 inches. Now let's start drafting. To know the amount of fabric to put on fold, calculate your chest measurements divided by 4 plus 1/2 inch seam allowance plus 3 inch placket allowance. Remember that this is an oversized shirt, so you should add about 4 to 6 inches extra ease to your chest measurement. After putting your fabric on fold, you can now draw your shoulder line and center front line. From the center front line, mark out the 3 inches placket allowance. The measurements we're going to mark onwards will start from the placket line and not the center front line. Now, on the shoulder line, place your shoulder measurement divided by 2 plus 1 inch armhole allowance. Since I'm drafting directly on the fabric, I'm taking the seam allowances into account. I'll explain why I added 1 inch instead of 1/2 inch armhole allowance as we go on. Then, mark your neckline measurement, 2.5 by 2 inches. Don't worry, if the neckline is small, you trim down the neckline to your actual neckline measurement when you start sewing. From the shoulder line, mark 2 inches downwards for the shoulder slope and connect to the neckline. Now from the shoulder slope, mark 7 inches downwards. This will be the temporary armhole measurement. You trim down the armhole to your actual armhole measurement when you join the pieces together, and that's why I added 1 inch armhole allowance earlier instead of the usual ½ inch allowance. On the chest line, place your chest measurement divided by 4 plus ½ inch seam allowance. Next, divide the armhole line by 2, then go in by ½ inch and draw your armhole curve. Now from the shoulder line, place your shirt length measurement plus 1 inch hem allowance. Since this is an oversized shirt, measure what you have on your chest line and mark across. Then draw a line. Next, we are going to curve the hemline for ease around the hip area. If you don't want to curve the hem, you could add a slit. Either way is fine. So on the hemline, go upwards by 2 inches. You can decide to curve it like I am doing right now, or however you like. Now we're done with the front pattern. Please note that we didn't add any seam allowance on the shoulder line. I'll explain that later. Remember that the right front piece placket allowance is 2½ inches. So we're basically going to subtract ½ inch from the 3 inches placket allowance to get the 2½ inches. Moving on to the back piece, put your fabric on fold and place one of the front pieces on top, leaving about 3½ inches of space upwards. The placket allowance won't be needed for the back piece, so we are going to leave that out by placing the placket line onto the folded edge of the fabric. Please make sure it's aligned well before you pin it down. Have you ever noticed that in some shirts, the shoulder seams comes forward a little bit, especially in men's shirts? The back piece extends towards the front by 1 inch or more. Now we are going to create that extension. From the front piece shoulder, go upwards by 3 inches and draw a line. Next, we are going to fold the extension towards the front piece. But first, we need to mark 1/2 inch on the front piece shoulder. Remember, we didn't add a shoulder allowance to the front piece. The allowance is included in the back piece extension. So the 1/2 inch line we are going to mark now will act as a guide. Then cut off the extension line to enable us fold over the extension. Now fold over the extension and place it exactly on that 1/2 inch line and pin. You can iron that shoulder area to create a crease. I don't have an iron close to me, so I'll use my hands to create the crease. Next, we are going to cut out the back piece only on the armhole area, the side, and the hem. Now on the neckline, draw a curve like this. Then cut around the curve and along the shoulder crease like this. Moving on to the yoke piece, place the back piece on the folded fabric, making sure to align the folded edges together. Now from the shoulder, mark the yoke length plus 1 inch hem allowance, then draw a line. Next, transfer the line to the folded fabric and cut. We've come to the end of this tutorial. We will cut out the sleeves after we've pieced everything together and trimmed the armhole. So stay tuned for the sewing part of the video. If you find this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe for more sewing tutorials.